Appreciate you.
Sorry, Malcolm.
I'll start again. Anyways, welcome to you all. And why is this doing this? Okay. Welcome all. So the African Meeting House Investigative Procurement Work Group is now open. We will take comments from the public. I would appreciate if they keep your comments to around that 2-minute mark that we do at the select board. But I do anticipate the nature of this meeting will have a lot of questions and speaking back and forth. We are on Zoom, so that will require a little bit of management. And remember, all your questions and comments need to go through the chair, so we don't have 6 people talking to at the same time. The agenda has been sent to you. Essentially 2 items. The review of our mission and mandate, because there seems to be some confusion about it. A little bit about the protocols of assessing town records, and an update on the investigation. If the committee doesn't mind, I would sort of like to meld those 2 items together, because as I was going through my notes, it kind of seemed more logical to talk about both of them to a degree at the same time. So if I have no objections from the committee, that's how we'll proceed. So there has been some confusion and comments.
Dr.
Excuse
McNabb, if I may,
Yes,
because this is a remote meeting, would you please call the roll of the committee?
yes, I'm sorry, sir. You're absolutely correct.
Thank you, John.
Yes, so Mr. Williams, can we find, does he hear me?
We can hear you.
He can hear you, Malcolm.
Okay, good. Mr. Thornwell,
Here.
Dr. Trent,
Here.
and Mr. Fox.
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I want to go back a little bit in history, and this will sort of talk about the history of this work group, and it will go into a little bit about the status of the investigation. So Article 36 of town meeting requested that the select board review the investigation of the original hate crime. So the African Meeting House Investigative Procurement Work Group was established this year by the select board, and the select board appointed me as chair. So the board got together, and in August, we issued an RFP, and we selected the Texas group of LCG to conduct the investigation. The select board approved that contract on August 20th, and therefore, in many ways, the task of this work group was technically finished. Remember, the work group was formed not to be the investigator, but to find an investigator. However, since the work group expressed interest in continuing their involvement, I asked for some clarification of the group's responsibilities from the select board. In other words, what more could we do? On September 10th, the select board voted to extend the work group, but only to answer questions from LCG, not as the investigative body. Remember, the important thing is that the investigation is independent and not really involved all of us who have some stake in Nantucket. And I would continue as liaison with the LCG group. So on the 17th of September, I sent an email to you all and summarizing the select board action, and then said that we would meet once the investigation starts. The contract was signed. Remember, the select board approved the contract, but the contract was not signed by both parties until October. And at that point, Marina and I started to find a time for a meeting. I did call LCG around October 13th to sort of welcome them aboard. And they provided me with a series of questions that they wanted answered, mostly kind of procedural activities, how they were going to get documents and so forth. And those were passed on to town council. That's why the town council is here tonight, because he can answer questions about that document. And on November 4th, LCG formally requested a whole pile of documents. So perhaps that was when the investigation started. And remember, there was an interesting select board meeting on November 5th, where some of you questioned why they hadn't been informed, but in fact, it was the day before that they requested the documents. All right, so are there any questions about the sequence of events or any questions that town council can answer about the procurement document?
Ask him why the mission statement said that we were supposed to contact him and be reporting frequently. I thought.
I didn't hear the question.
He's basically, I'll summarize it in that in the RFP, Malcolm, and I'll read it. It says under 3.5, quality of work. Throughout the investigation, the selected consultant will work closely with the work group and will be expected to provide regular updates at a specified time. The consultant will spend time explaining the findings, the analysis, and the draft report to the work group before being presented. The final product will be presented by the consultant to the work group and select board in a public meeting. And I think this is the basis from which I certainly thought and Cliff that we were going to be involved. We have it's here in the RFP. That was the entire work group is not to we are not to investigate. We're not investigative, but why we weren't involved in why we're not now being part of that process, which is in writing. I'm not really clear why that is.
Because that actually, the basic scope of work is still the same. That has not changed. But that is in contrast, that particular wording is not correct as far as the mandate of this work group was set up to. This work group was set up to find an investigator, period.
So who?
Yes, Dr. Trent.
Mr. Chair, so if I'm understanding you correctly, that the mandate of setting up the work group versus what was described in the RFP were in conflict. And when there was a conflict, the decision then is deferred to whatever was approved by the select board in the initial documentation. Is that what's being stated here?
That is correct, Dr. Trent.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna follow the rules. Let's just start over. Let's just get rid of everything and start over.
I think I heard you, Mr. Williams, but it's one of the complaints has been this has taken too long. And we could start all over, and I think the select board would still issue the same mandate that we find an investigator, an independent investigator, which we did.
This is out of control. This is out of control. This is wrong. That's all I have to say. Wrong.
Well, thank you for your report. Any other comments?
Yes. So just so I'm understanding this correctly, I just want to make sure that this is clear as we move forward in the discussion, we'll become more involved. This working group was selected by the select board, and they have there's their own set of legal guidance in terms of what they can allow an independent group of citizens to do. When we created the RFP as a working group, there was language in there that was not consistent with what the legal limits were for what this working group can do. So in that case, when there's that conflict, we have to defer to what's legally allowable and what has been decided by the select board. And so it's my understanding that because that is what happened in this case, in order to proceed forward, we then must defer to the decisions that were made by the select board in the original creation of this working group. So it doesn't damage necessarily anything that has been done, but in a conflict with RFP or anything that we've created, it always defers back to decisions, policies, rules, and laws as established by the select board. Am I correct in my understanding?
I think you're correct. I'd ask Mr. Giorgio to comment on that, but I think you've summarized it correctly.
I would agree, Dr. McNabb. That is a correct summary.
Thank you. Do we have a, yes,
We have a hand raised by John Carl McGrady.
okay.
That's not true. Sorry, I did not raise my hand.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Ms. Coleman, is there other comments out there? Hands?
John Carl still has his hand up, so oh no, that's okay. I would like to mention to our participants that on the agenda, the questions from LCG are included as well as the responses from town council, just so they can follow along when we are at that point to refer to their agendas, the meeting posting that was online.
So just to be clear, Malcolm, you're saying that 3.5 quality of work, that entire paragraph is inaccurate and we shouldn't have been part of the RFP.
That is correct.
Wow. Well, I mean, our starting point is so off base. I mean, just to go back to the original request for the RFP was to have it revised, wasn't it? By I think Cliff and Dr. Trent piped in, and they wanted to have the header of the original town warrant identified to include all the names and not limited to, so that people could be in part of the investigation. And then,
well, yeah, go ahead, and then I'll comment.
I think it was agreed that that was agreed to as a group, that the RFP was going to be updated. And then in lieu of an emergency meeting, you said you would go ahead and do it. And I'm not sure that it's not clear that that's been completed. Because there was part of that, and I think Dr. Trent could maybe elaborate, but she even said that it was important to have this revision because if there was any, during the investigation, if there were any egregious additional aspects to be found, that they would be recommended that an investigation should be recommended to be expanded as a new investigation. Maybe Dr. Trent can pipe up as to whether or not I got that exactly right, but I think that was part of the importance of and Barbara Burgle, not being part of it. I mean, I think people are certainly asking, what's up with that? What happened to that RFP revision?
Well, I will comment, then I'll let Brian comment on that. The RFP, the investigation is started. The crux and the purpose of the investigation is not changed. We're really just talking about the mandate of this group was to find the investigator, period. We got a little off, all right? Mr. Talbot, you want to speak?
Sure, thank you. Well, I just want to clarify something because everybody keeps saying we were supposed to revise the RFP. That's not the way you make changes to the RFP. The RFP document was issued. There was a request to add the language from the RFP, which was added in an addenda that was issued. That is the way you make changes to the RFP. That was done in an addenda to the RFP. That clarification was issued, I think, very close to the timing after that. So that's the way the revisions are done. The entire RFP isn't revised. There's an addenda issued for any changes or any questions that any vendors may have asked. To answer those questions is issued, and that becomes part of the relevant document. It's not a complete revision to the RFP itself. So there was an addenda issued that dealt with the two questions that I believe Mr. Williams had asked for, and that was done.
So that was done, and the LCG received that information.
Everybody who registered on OpenGov, which LCG did, would have received that notification of the addenda issue at the time it was issued, which was well before the due date and the deadline for submission of the proposals. So the Article 36 language was issued up and added in an addendum that they would have received and had to acknowledge when they submitted their bid.
But I suppose what we're asking is, what did it say? I mean, what did your addenda say? Because since we haven't been shown anything to reflect.
I believe that I thought that it had been sent. It gave the exact motion or gave the exact language in Article 36. I'd have to go back and look at it to be honest with you, but I know that the request was to include the exact language from the annual town meeting warrant, which we did. As a
Right, I have, yes, if I may, I interject my own meaning here. It includes, the important part is this. This is what's important. We've all been upset that this has taken so long. Right now, we have an independent investigator experienced in doing these type of investigations who does not have any connection with any of us or this island, who is in the process of collecting documents and doing the investigation. Period. That's the bottom line, and that's what's important. I think what the public wants to know is the fact that after all this time, we're finally getting our act together and getting this done. Period.
So who,
Other comments?
if I may,
Sure, go
Mr.
ahead, sir.
So I wanted to point out, and to follow up in terms of what Brian said, the original town meeting vote authorized, or I should say directed the select board to undertake the investigation. And the select board decided that the best way to do that was to hire an independent investigator. And that was the purpose of the RFP. Whenever a contract is awarded pursuant to an RFP, the awarding authority, which in this case was the select board, has the authority to basically revise the plan of service to meet the specific needs of the town. And regardless of what the original RFP said, it was the select board made a determination at an open public meeting to redefine the role that the work group would have during this investigation. And that was done, Dr. McNabb, on September 10th at your select board meeting. And I'd like to, if I may, just read from those minutes, if that would be okay.
Go right ahead.
The minutes basically say that Ms. Moore moved to extend the duration of the African Meeting House Investigation Procurement Work Group, because if you recall, it was originally constituted for the purpose of assisting the town and the select board in selecting a investigator. But at the September 10th meeting, the board had a discussion about that, and she moved to extend the duration of the work group for the express purpose of responding to inquiries from the firm for clarification on the intent and scope of the investigation only. And any report produced as work product issued by the firm is to come directly to the select board. It is not to be evaluated or amended by the work group. That was seconded, and it was a unanimous vote in favor. So going forward, after the investigator was selected, the work group has a very limited role. And that's only if specific questions are requested of the work group by the investigator, then there will be a limited role for the work group. Now, the thing to keep in mind, as Dr. McNabb mentioned, is we received a whole series of questions from the investigator, which Dr. McNabb shared with me. And I worked with him after reviewing the current charge of the work group, and we provided a list of responses. And if I may briefly summarize those, I think it might be helpful. So so what we well, let me preface this by saying everyone wants this investigation to be fruitful and helpful, and to fulfill what was essentially the intent of town meeting. However, we have to be careful that all the rights of all the parties involved in this matter are protected. The civil rights that everyone has, and there are privacy rights that have to be protected. So it is the intent at this point to make sure that not only that the investigator gets the information that they need, but that it's done in a way that is protective of everyone's rights, because that's really a priority here. So the way this is going to work, and it's already started, is the town's record access officer under the public records law, which is of course Maureen, and she is the staff person that supports this committee. All requests for information are to go to Maureen from the investigator in the first instance. And she has already received a lengthy list of documents that they're looking for. And we are in the process of assisting Maureen in making those documents available. And those will go directly to the investigator. In terms of who holds the ultimate authority for this investigation, well, that is the select board. And that's based on two factors. One is only the select board is authorized under the general laws to conduct an investigation of a town department. And Article 36, the motion that was made, specifically directs the select board to undertake the investigation, and that is consistent with state law. And of course, town meeting voted to appropriate $60,000 from free cash for this purpose, and that's the source of the funds that are being used to pay the investigator. Now, the investigator asked, well, what happens if there's a conflict between a potential conflict between the town and, meaning the select board, and various town departments and the work group? And if there is, then we've advised the investigator to contact town council if that's an issue, or if they're having any trouble obtaining documents that they feel they need in order to conduct this investigation thoroughly and properly. So again, Maureen is going to be the point of contact for the investigator. The investigation is now well underway, and we are in the process of providing those documents. We may have to redact certain information. You know, there was a public records request, as some of you may know, for the police report in this matter. And we worked with Maureen to redact the personal identifiable information in that report as a matter of protection of privacy rights. There was an appeal made to the supervisor of public records, which is the state official in charge with enforcing the public records law. And the supervisor agreed with our redactions. And as far as I know, that report was provided to the requester with the redactions. Now, the other, obviously, there are a lot of records that are in the town's possession. There are the police department records. There are emails back and forth. There's other documentation, and we are working to make that information available to the investigator as we speak. The investigator, however, wanted to know if the town would assist in cooperating with the district attorney, the state police, crime lab, federal partners as needed. And what we have said is that the investigator should, in the first instance, make any requests for documents that are not in the town's possession, that would be in, state police or the district attorney. They should make that request directly to those agencies. And if they are not successful in getting those documents, and they very well may not be because of the nature of this investigation, but that they can always request the town and town council to see what, if any, assistance we could provide. So then the question was, what is the timeline for this investigation? I believe the RFP said that it would be a 12-month contract from October 25 to September of 26. And the question was, does the town intend to maintain that timeline? And our answer back was yes. Barring anything unforeseen, we expect this investigator to complete this investigation within that time frame. Then the question becomes, well, what happens with the report that is going to be prepared by the investigator? And depending upon the nature of that report, we anticipate that it will either be presented to the select board in an executive session, if there is a basis for that executive session, or the select board could make the report public and discuss it, have the investigator come and give a public presentation at a future meeting of the select board. We don't know at this point whether it will be executive session or open session, but the select board is directing this investigation, and they will, with the advice of town council, make that determination whether A, an executive session is warranted, and B, whether this would qualify for an executive session under the open meeting law. So I guess the final question is how this is actually going to unfold is going to depend largely on whether the investigators have sufficient information in the existing records in order to make a reasoned judgment, which, by the way, is whether or not the investigation that was conducted primarily by the police department was done in accordance with all department policies and for such investigations. And that's the scope of this investigation. And we expect the report to address that question. Okay, so I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions?
Rocky has his hand up.
Go ahead, Rock.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you very much. So what you're telling me is, for all intent and purposes, this group is done with their work. If that's the case, I surely was led to believe that we'd have a little bit more input and know what was going on during the investigation. What bothers me is that this investigation can get to the point, and if the select board decide to hold this in executive session, all the people who are asking me every week are going to say the same old thing, that it was covered up. So there's no way, but I hope for this to become public, because I put my name on this. You know what I mean? But I don't feel as though if they go to executive session, I'm not going to know anything. Thank you.
If I may,
Mr. Fox, let me go first. I put my name on this too, and I will assure you that nothing will be covered up. I mean,
I know that.
Wasting.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about John Q. Public. That's what their perception is going to be. I trust you wholeheartedly, Malcolm. Mr. Chair.
The report, if it's legally possible, will be public. All right? Period. If somehow that's stymied in some way, then I will raise hell.
Dr. McNabb, if I may,
Please, sir.
it really is premature at this point to predict exactly. We don't know what that report is going to say. And even if there is a reason for an executive session for the presentation of that report, that does not mean that it will not, after that point, be made public. But that's a decision that the select board would make. And it's also possible that the select board will take a look at the draft report and say, we're going to make it, we're going to present, the investigator will present this at an open meeting.
I think the reality of life, that this report will be public and made public in an appropriate legal way. There's just no way it can't.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments?
Dr. Trent has her hand
Go
raised,
ahead,
please.
sir.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. As the legal representative of essentially the victim of this incident, the Museum of African American History, the African Meeting House of Nantucket. It is my understanding, John, based on what you're saying as town council, that even our knowledge of this report is dependent on whether or not it is made public. Given the gravity of this incident and the impact it has had on my organization, its standing within the community, its impact, and even concerns among the board, as well as the National Trust for Historic Preservation, who was aggressively and intimately involved with this incident almost within 24 hours. It is my hope that the select board, after review, regardless of what what the decisions and the conclusions are, will make this report as public as legally possible. I am assured, John, based on for what you have shared with us in terms of procedures, that the investigators can conduct a truly impartial investigation, especially because they are able to go to the AG's office, the state police offices, without going through the town, and that should they not have the success and they need the town to verify that they are here to do the work that the town has hired them to do, that the town will do that in that capacity. But my understanding and how you've communicated that is that that would be the extent of all of that. So I do feel assured in how this process is proceeding. I am very concerned. And while I have learned a lot about my fellow commission members and the passion through which they care about the African Meeting House, I would just like to publicly urge the select board to, regardless of whatever conclusions come out in the next year through this investigation, to make the report as public as legally possible. I'm not asking anyone to violate the law, to share any intimate or violate anyone's civil rights, but as much as legally possible to share information, especially around the general conclusions, around what happened and how the town can best move forward to prevent any of the mistakes or missteps that happened, excuse me, in this past investigation from happening again to anyone who would be a victim of such a crime, although we all hope that such a crime will not happen again in Nantucket. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Trent.
Dr. McNabb, if I just
Go ahead. Yes.
real quickly, I think one of the very possible outcomes here, in line with what Dr. Trent was just saying, is there may have to be limited redactions made to the final report to protect people's privacy rights. I don't know that for a fact. There may be, but that does, so just as we made the police report already available to a requester with redactions, I'm going to assume that there will probably be some redacted information, people's identity, that kind of thing, to protect their privacy, even though the final report is made public and the underlying conclusion, which is did the town and the police department follow the proper procedures? That will be fully answered.
Thank you. Other comments, questions from the committee, the public? Okay, so what will happen next is if the investigator has any questions that he needs to ask the committee, as we are now authorized, I will get us all together again and have him ask those questions, and we'll answer them as best we can. And I will touch base with the primary investigator every now and then just to make sure that he's getting what he wants to, that he's not getting any roadblocks from anybody involved, so I can keep this delayed process moving as fast as we can in a governmental organization. If I hear none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor by roll call, Dr. Trent,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
If this person is available.
Cliff,
what did you, how did he vote?
he got cut off somehow.
All right, Luke, Mr. Thornwell,
Aye.
and Mr. Fox.
Aye.
I can't hear what he's saying.
Aye.
But-
Aye.
No, I got you. Okay. I'm sorry we can't hear Mr. Williams, but I'm sure we'll hear from him. And in the interim, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you all for coming on this holiday week. And I will keep you informed as we move along, if there's anything to inform you about, and if the investigator wants to talk to her. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.